this topic that we're going to be talking about this evening. We'll definitely bring it back to you, and it is back by popular demand. So thank you so much for joining in. Let me welcome all the community radio stations that have joined with us, and all the people watching on YouTube like yourself would like to join welcome you to the program. So you're more than welcome to speak in any language of your choice, by the way. If you want to speak in any of the Nguni languages, any of the Sesotho languages, you're more than welcome to do that. English, Afrikaans, you're more than welcome to do that as well. A point of contact this evening, if you want to be in touch with us via telephone, which will be ideal because in this way we are able to interact with you real time. It's 0800 142 446. That phone number again, it's 0800 142 446. If you want to hook us up on Twitter, welcome to do that as well at DOJCD_ZA, the DOJCD_ZA. We are available on Facebook as well, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. I've got a bit of a flu though, but it's not going to hinder us from doing what we do best. So don't worry about it. But from time to time, again, you might hear some sniffles. Please pardon me. These things happen, especially when you're doing live radio. All right, we're talking about a very, very touchy subject, one that I would like to even encourage you as a parent. If you do have a young one next to you, please, you might want to occupy them with something. Maybe give them one of those building blocks. My wife bought my daughter one of those moldy things. It's a sand type of thing which you put together. It looks like a patty and you can make shapes. I play with it more than she does, but that's all right. So you might want to keep him occupied this evening and have him do stuff so that we can talk about adult stuff in my view of that way. We're talking about sexting and cyberbullying. Sexting and cyberbullying. That's what we're going to be talking about this evening. And joining us to discuss the subject and also to highlight the consequences of sexting is somebody that you know very well. She has been part of the broadcast before, and her name is Miss Pratima Osman. She's the Legal Administration Officer at DOJ and CD. Pratima, thank you so much. You did promise me you're going to come back and look at you, man.
I did.
Look at you, you're back. There we go. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So, interact with us, 0800 142 446. Twitter, it is DOJCD_ZA. On Facebook is the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So, sexting le cyberbullying. Batho ba itira ba ranka mo interneteng ga ile gore motho ene gore o shumisha internet ka metla le matšatši o kry go le gore na le batho ba ene gore bona ba itia bo go mankanna mo cyberspace or the internet. That's what we're going to be talking about. The issues just sexting. Taba tša gore batho ba hla ba bolela ka taba tša thobalano e leng gore ga se ya maleba mo ka text phones tša bona tša ba romelana melaetša jalo ke tšona dilo tše e leng gore tle be re bolaišana ka tšona. O kwa ke bolela Sepedi jwale nka kgopela gore wena ge e le gore mohlomongwe Sepedi a sa bolena o ka bolela Sezulu, o ka bolela Setswana, o nga thetha neSixhosa. You can speak in Ndebele, any of the Nguni languages, any of the Sesotho languages. You're more than welcome. Please interact with us. Here we go. We're kicking off, and I always do this. I always like to put a bit of a foundation before we even get into some of the deeper things of any topic that we speak about on every Thursday. I want us to explain these two terms that we're dealing with. They're interlinked, I understand, and we're going to find out as we go along with the show. But cyberbullying, let's start with that.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me back to the studio. I'm very pleased to be here. Let's first talk, in order to define cyberbullying, let's first talk about bullying. Bullying, as we all can remember, is the pushing and shoving and name-calling that happens almost everywhere.
Right.
In schools, it happens a lot amongst young people. There's often a group that will tease another child because he's short, he's small, he's big, he's fat, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the bullying that we know. And that's the bullying that we have that happens in a face-to-face space. However, since the introduction and the use of technology such as cell phones, laptops, all forms of electronic media, whenever there is an attempt to bully somebody, the people who are doing the bullying forget that they are bullying a person. So it's a virtual space. So cyberbullying is the act of sending messages or texts or chatting on chat rooms and saying things which are basically considered ugly.
Right.
They are things that are meant to harm other people. So the message would be something to the effect that, you are so short, there's no way you're going to get through this tunnel, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And some of them can be really, really nasty. I don't really want to give examples which are nasty on the radio show, but I do think that people need to remember, parents especially need to remember that often when a child is being bullied, cyberbullied, she or he will suffer quite a deal in terms of what is being said about him or her. And it can be something very personal, and often we think of it just as being something in regard to something that can be seen, but sometimes there are issues around what kind of person you are, what kind of mental capacity you have, and all those kinds of things. And those can be extremely hurtful. And because you can't see the person doesn't mean that that message doesn't hurt.
Right.
So the act of cyberbullying is basically one which is sent out, whether it's text or whichever way you send it out, to hurt and damage the other person.
Right. All right. 0800 142 446, 0800 142 446, on Twitter at DOJCD_ZA, and on Facebook at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Ke mo kona mo ka re jang gona le mhlomo ka nyo go boletsana le nna ka taba tshebela nga tsona botshong bja lono o mo ge tshumthele tshego le wena o be karolo ya khasho ya rena ya legono. 15 after 6 o'clock. If you've just joined us, well, you haven't missed out on a lot. You've just missed out on the explanation though of cyberbullying. But let's go into another one.
Okay.
Here's a sexting, and it's a phrase that is quite new to a lot of people's ears.
It is very new.
Yeah, let's talk about
it's new not just to professionals but also just to ordinary folk.
Right.
But I wanted to also add something in regard to the cyberbullying definition we've just given. I think we must remember that cyberbullying is not confined to children. That adults also get affected by texts which come and which are so nasty that they cause psychological problems.
Geez, I was going to ask you about age groups as well.
Yes.
So it's good that you explained
it goes
now, yeah.
all the way from, we've had examples of children as young as 6 receiving and sending cyberbullying texts. So it's a very, very large problem, and we do need to talk about how it presents and what we're going to do about it. So that's in regard to cyberbullying. Sexting, however, involves the transmission. When we say transmission, it's the sending and the receiving of photographs or text which is sexually explicit.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be, and it normally happens in a younger person situation where I have a boyfriend and I want to show him how much I love him. So I take a semi-nude picture and I send it to my boyfriend thinking that he will appreciate it so much. In a day or two or a week or two or a month or two, the relationship crumbles. Now that picture which has been sent is still sitting on his telephone. He sends it to a friend of his and says, "This was my girlfriend." The friend of his thinks, well, let me then send it to a couple of our friends, and that then becomes a broadcast, let's put it that way,
Right.
of a picture which was meant to be private.
Okay.
And I think we need to understand that the sending and transmission of any form of sexually explicit, and it doesn't have to be pornographic, it just has to be even of the breasts and the buttocks or anything like that, can amount to sexting.
Right.
So even text messages which are very sexually explicit can amount to sexting.
All right, somebody might be listening and saying to us right now that, okay, but what if I'm in a relationship and I feel that myself and my partner, we're fine, we can do that ourselves. Is there something wrong with that type of thing, if somebody may ask?
It may turn out wrong. The problem is that we need to remember, once we send an image or a text which is of that nature, even the normal text messages, they can never be deleted.
Right.
We may delete it from our telephones, it may be deleted from our laptops. Somewhere along, when somebody's searching, they'll find it.
Right.
And then it becomes transmitted to the bigger audience. And there isn't anything wrong, but there's no guarantee
Of safety and
of
privacy.
safety and privacy that when the relationship crumbles,
Yeah.
or for instance, if you're in a marriage and the divorce happens or whatever, that those images won't be transmitted by whoever wants to transmit it to other people. So I think that the bottom line for protection would be to not send messages which are of a sexually explicit nature to your partner over the electronic media.
Yeah. All right. If it goes onto the net, you can never know where it's going to end up. That's what they
right.
always say. 19 after 6 o'clock, 0800 142 446. Let's go to Lepalale and start taking callers from there. This is our first caller calling from there, and I believe it's Endow, if I'm not mistaken. Endow, good evening to you. You're our first caller. Thank you so much. Rona le kae na ka re ke kwa ba re le tswa Lephalale ge le gore mohlomongwe le ka nyaka go bolela le Sepedi le dumeletse gore le ka dira jalo ka. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your consideration. Right. Right. Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. This is Endao calling from Lepalale, giving us some words of motivation. I think that's the best way to start off the show, by putting some foundation there. And Endao has done exactly that. And thank you so much, my brother, for having taken your time to call in to lay some foundation and to give us some inspiration while we edit. Let's go to, I believe it's Vugani FM, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm seeing it's Patrick. Patrick Vugani FM. Good evening to you, sir. I'm telling you that. Potso ga re ke thabela utlwa le wena kana ke bua le wena ka email fela matsatsi ana ha nka re bua o tla lo mo mohaleng ke thabela le wena o nkile nako ga o tla re founela a utlwe he. Let me thank Lennox for standing in for me last week. There we go. Proper, thank you so much. And let me thank Vugani FM. You guys are always our partners down in the Eastern Cape, doing an absolutely amazing job. I'll be seeing you soon. Here I'll be dashing down to the Eastern Cape pretty soon. So I'll hit a turn by you guys and say hi quickly. Let's go to Riverside and we're chatting to Kuli. Okay, Kuli's not there for now. We're going to try to get Kuli back. Kuli, if you're listening, the guys are going to try to give you a call back. Please just answer their call when they do. 24 after 6, 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. Nomoro gimpiwa fela ga ile gore o tla bo shumisha mogala wa Telkom ungeke ukhokhe lutho ngempela mabe uzobusebenzisa lo ilonjani Telkom line yakho kushayela lapha e-studio mawufuna ukukhuluma nathi sikhuluma nge-cyberbullying ne-texting akhe ngizwe kuwe umlaleli ukuthi mhlawumbe wena yini le ukucaka ngayo mase sikhuluma ngale cyberbullying and texting I beg your pardon. I would like to hear from you, so let's jump into it while we're waiting for Kuri to come back.
Okay, so cyberbullying we see as a form of activity that causes harm to another, causes harm to the victim, the person who's been sent that message. In a similar way, sexting, when the photograph that I sent in a loving gesture gets sent on to other people, that's a form of abuse as well. Right. So that person gets harmed by the fact that they are sending on this message to people for whom it was not meant. Right. And we must remember the other connection is the fact that it's all done electronically. It's all done in terms of telephones, cell phones, laptops. But the other forms that are very dangerous, we find, are chat rooms, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
So a child goes to a internet cafe, gets into a chat room, and is approached by this person who says, I'm 17 years old, here's a picture of me. The problem is that you don't really know whether that person who's speaking to you is actually that 17-year-old.
Yeah.
So you give details to this person, and that person then starts to groom you in order to seduce you to do things you don't really want to do. So it's a very, very serious form. I think the other thing that we need to know is when a sexting message, which is a sexually explicit message, has been received, or a photograph which you don't want, and it can be from anybody, you need to feel free to speak to your employers or your police, if you're in school, to your teachers and to your parents. Now, what we've realized is that a lot of parents don't know about cyberbullying. Mm-hmm. They don't realize what it is. So a lot of the education around what cyberbullying is has to be done outside via radio stations like this. The other things that parents can do, and teachers and police need to be aware of, is that there are forms of bullying which have an effect. So, for instance, somebody who is continuously being harassed, for instance, may become scared, may become afraid, may feel insecure, may become isolated, may allow themselves not to speak to anybody.
Right.
So you'll find your child comes from school and you say, hi, how are you? And he says, I'm fine. And he bangs the door and he goes into his room, which is unusual behavior mostly. Or the child's schoolwork suddenly drops. Or the child becomes tearful and wants to cry all the time, refuses to eat. Then you know there's an issue.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing you can do is either to try to speak to the child, and that doesn't work, to speak to the school, the principals, because schools have a policy on cyberbullying. So every school is meant to prepare a policy in regard to the cyberbullying that might happen at the school, and whether children can bring items such as cell phones to the school, and what kind of assistance can be provided. Yeah. So if it's a very serious, bad sexting message, for instance, report it to the police. That's the first thing. If it's a very bad text issue, I would suggest speak to your elders, speak to your teacher, and somebody that you trust. Your teacher, your principal, your parents. Parents first, teachers and principals later. But you don't cut yourself off. And this is to the young people. Don't cut yourself off. Please approach somebody. Social workers are there. They are able to assist. This is something that we're all tackling as a whole. So don't allow yourself to be feeling helpless and hopeless. You need to be facing it. The other thing is we want to urge young people to be very careful about whom they share their cell phone details, their laptop details. They should set passwords which are difficult
To crack.
so that not everybody can crack it for them, and everybody has entry. And put as few details as you can on Facebook, for instance. It's quite scary to see how much personal information is put on Facebook, and people utilize that information not in a good way, but in a bad way, to start bullying you, to start sending you horrible pictures on Facebook, to hack your account. So I think it's a case of being serious about how much you put out there, because if you put too much, it's going to be utilized.
Right. Okay. 0800 142 446. 0800 142 446. It's a toll free from your telecom line. 29 after 6 o'clock. Let's go to Patrick's questions. Really, this is the one that when I've opened up the show, I started by saying I suspect a bit of a link, and Patrick agrees with me there.
Yes.
He wants to find out how are the two connected to each other, sexting and and cyberbullying.
Well, I think we've just spoken about that. Sexting, once the private message, the private sexually explicit message, or the private photograph becomes public,
right,
you are being harassed, you are being bullied. Okay? And cyberbullying is bullying, whether it's about what features you have, how poor you are, how ugly you are, what kind of personality you are. All those are bullying things.
Okay.
So that's their basic. Their basic is that they are connected by electronic technology,
right,
and media. And secondly is that element of doing harm, of bullying. So that's how they are connected. No person should be allowed to bully another in terms of anything at all. In other words, their rights to dignity and privacy have been infringed. So they should never be allowed to bully you in a sexual manner or in a text manner, let's put it that way. I think the other thing is that I'm trying to highlight how strong parents' roles are.
Yeah.
The parental role is very high. We would like parents to be knowing their children, to say, this mood that my child is in now is not normal. She's depressed. She's acting as if we don't exist.
I was actually going to ask you about some of the signs that parents should start looking out for. Yeah.
If the child starts cutting herself off from the parents or from the household, then you know there's a bit of an issue. If the child is extremely anxious or wants to hide all the time, or doesn't want to put the self, or doesn't allow parents access, then there's an issue. We must remember that cyberbullying affects the child in such a way that they become emotionally entangled in what is happening. Mm-hmm. They become sad, they become depressed, and they think they are alone. They're not. It is amazing to find out. In fact, we have some statistics here. We've been able to work with UNISA in regard to some of the research that they've been doing around cyberbullying. And we've got some statistics here from the age of 12. And we're finding up to 37.2% of 12-year-olds, 12 to 13-year-olds, have been affected by bullying.
Wow.
And as you get older, at the age of 18, it rises to 48.7%. And that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's only in terms of cyberbullying. But if we talk about emotional bullying, those figures go through the roof. For the age of 14 and 15, it's 83%. That's very high. So a child who is affected by bullying and cyberbullying and sexting will display the kinds of emotional anxiety.
Right.
And the biggest message that I want to give children and parents is that children need to understand they're not alone in this.
100%.
There is help out there, and parents have the right to ask the question, what's that? And if what's happening, if they can't help, they must go to teachers, go to the social workers, and let them assist.
0800 142 446, Radio Riverside. Thank you so much for tuning in, Radio Riverside, this evening. Let's hear from Kuli, who's listening via you guys. Kuli, good evening to you. Thank you so much for calling in. Koelie, ek sê vir u dankie oor dat u ons vanaand geluister sien. There we go. Bit of Afrikaans throwing it in there. It's been a while, really. Thank you so much, Kuli, for just keeping in tabs with me. That my Afrikaans is still okay. It's still okay. Except for your donkey, Kuli. 0800-142-446. There's the nummer om te skakel. As jy wil saam met ons vanaand gesels, there's die nommer wat jy kan gebruik dan. There's 0800-142-446. 0800-142-446. Let's go to George Mapanga from Mashishing FM. George, it's been a while, my man. Geez, why are you hiding yourself? I'm good. What's your question? Yes. Thank you so much. Bro George, stop being a stranger, man. For the fact that I'm not working with Mpumalanga anymore, it does not mean that you should be a stranger. I'm going to pop in there in a while. See, in a couple of weeks, I'll come down there and say hi to you guys. Thank you so much. That's our guys. They are partners. Mashishing FM. Bona ba rasha baleko province ya Mpumalanga. Absolutely amazing guys there, I must say. Okay, let's start with Kulie's questions. Laws. Any laws that have been put in place to make sure? In fact, if you see, you see, Kulie's question actually ties in with George's one in terms of what is it exactly that we're doing? Are we having laws and acts that have been put in place to make sure that we're combating this?
Yes. Thank you for those questions. They're very, very, and they show for me a level of concern that is out there in the communities. Just for Kulie, in regard to when somebody makes themselves guilty of cyberbullying, what happens is, and I must confess that we don't have a specific law in terms of cyberbullying. In fact, this phenomenon is so new internationally that we don't have an act that says this is an act for cyberbullying and what kind of offense is committed.
Right.
However, what we do have in terms of cyberbullying at the moment, in other pieces of legislation such as the Criminal Procedure Act, we have what we call something called crimen injuria. Crimen injuria is the unlawful and intentional serious violation of the dignity of somebody.
Right.
So if I send a text which violates somebody's dignity, that person, the victim, the one who's received the text, can go and report and say, this person has injured my dignity and I want him charged. So that's the first thing that can be done. Then the other thing is, if for instance, if we all know that assault is not just the smacking or the hitting of somebody.
It can be verbal as well.
It can be verbal, and it can also be the inspiration of fear. So if, for instance, somebody says, you will see to it that I will cut you up.
Yeah.
Okay? And he sends text in that regard repeatedly, for instance, that person can be charged with assault. And he will be prosecuted in that regard. So those are existing laws that actually help.
Mm-hmm.
There is the issue of criminal defamation, and the one thing we must remember is that defamation is a very difficult issue to prove, because there are elements, for instance, around the broadcast of the bad reputational damage that has been done. So if, for instance, I'm a writer and somebody sends out a whole lot of text saying Pratima is not a writer, she's been plagiarizing and taking from other people, and I know that that's not true, I can sue for defamation. if I can show that this has reached a lot of people and I am unable to earn my living from this any longer.
So that's on the broadcast level. Is that what
it can work on the broadcast level? It has to work that it becomes public knowledge.
Right.
And so that it causes me damage. So that would be another way of suing the person. Then, for instance, if somebody sends a message and says, if you don't, and I always use the smaller example, for instance, with young people. If they're at school and somebody says, give me your lunch money. If you don't, you see, I'll tear up your books.
Try. And I'm just doing
So I don't have the money and he keeps threatening me, for instance, keeps bullying me. Then that demanding of something like that is extortion. So that's also a charge that you can lay. So there are some consequences which we don't need a new law for.
You can go through those.
You can have somebody charged. The issue around sexting, though, is more serious. Sexting, when somebody takes a picture and transmits a picture, it can become a violation under the Sexual Offences Act. The further thing is that if you persuade somebody that you want to take nude pictures of that person and you transmit it, that also amounts to the transmission of pornography, and that becomes a charge. And I must just say that charge, even if it's a child and it's serious enough, can land up with the child being convicted and having their name on the National Sex Offences Register, and that is a very serious offence, because we find that when your name's on the National Register for Sex Offenders, that name name being there can prevent you from getting work. You are not allowed to work with children ever, and can become a permanent record. So we view that extremely seriously.
Right.
So those are the kinds of remedies that are available.
Right. Maybe before we go on with those, just make a note. We're going to come back to those. I just want to. I don't want to keep Teppo from Northwest holding on for a bit too long. Good evening to you, Teppo. Re Teppo. Le gae. Ke thabela go utlwa go wena. Potso ya gago ya reng? Dumela. A utlwe he Life FM. Ke thabela go utlwa go lona. Okay. Thanks, brother Teppo. It's a wrap. Teppo from Life FM in Northwest. Let's go to Limpopo, Lima. Lima from Limpopo. Le kae mme? A wa re gona ke ntse ke re Lima mo ke a hoeletša ka kwa ra gona motho nkwang ne. Batho ba tla ba nna ba nrakelela ka kgonego ba. Ke a leboga. Ke leboge ke mme Lima ena o le tša Limpopo. Nka rata go kwa gore ke station se sefeng se le setheletšeng. Ke mohudi a okay. Yeah, I know that my colleague Mosotho Stone deals with you guys. Thank you so much, Lima. There we go, 17 before 7, 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. That is our toll-free number if you're going to be using a telecom line. Otherwise, if you're going to be using a cell phone, you're more than welcome to give us a call first, and we'll take your details and call you back. And let me just welcome those who are watching on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for having joined in this evening. All right, I'm going to be taking some of those Facebook, Twitter questions in a bit of a short while. I see My social media producer is typing her way away. My goodness. Welcome back, Simone. There we go. All right, let's go. All right, you want to highlight that? Let's do that. And then we'll come back to the questions. How about that?
Okay, I want to also highlight another form of remedy that is available to people, and that is the Protection from Harassment Act. What people who are receiving cyberbullying messages, and particularly, I find that this happens a lot in relationships which have ended, for instance, and somebody doesn't want to stop sending those messages. So they can approach the magistrate's court and ask for a protection order in terms of the Harassment Act.
Right.
And we have set up measures in which those cell phone messages can actually be interrogated with the service provider. So we do have that available as well. So there are remedies. I know there's a development of cyber crime in terms of business that has also been developed. But I'd like to think that we need to first also deal with it on a personal level.
Right.
The other issue that George asked, if I remember correctly, is the issue of preventative measures.
Yes.
And I think this is where we emphasize the fact that parents and users of laptops and cell phones, and when they enter into these chat rooms, need to be absolutely aware of how much information they've put up as their Facebook page or their image, and all of those issues. I think you need to be able to understand to protect yourself. But as parents need to say to their children, listen, rather put less than more information. So don't give everybody your password. In fact, you should never give anybody and make your password difficult. Don't let it be easily cracked by anybody.
Well, difficult for somebody, but at least easy enough for you to still remember.
Exactly. And and then also to explain to children when they do get a cell phone that there are going to be certain times that they will be asked to not take it to school. For instance, school policies allow principals to say that they have to leave cell phones at home, or they have to deposit it into a special area. And also not to take pictures which are insensitive. We have visited a school where a child had been basically suspended because he had been taking explicit pictures under teachers' dresses.
Yeah.
So we don't want that kind of behavior. So I think parents need to be very, very, very clear with children as to what they're going to use those cell phones and laptops and chat rooms for.
All right. Let's go to Tsepo in Northwest. Tsepo, your question was actually answered, but maybe you just came in a bit later. Your question was, what are the age groups that are affected? We'll deal with it just now, Tsepo. Maybe let me do this quickly. Let me take Tulani Mkwanazi, who's been holding for a bit too long on the phone. Bab Tulani, Bab Mkwanazi. Where Bab Mkwanazi? Kunjani baba? Hayi manje ngizwa wena sewushayele ngiyajabula ke baba. Masizwe kuwe ukuthi umbuzo wakho uthi I knew you were going to crack on that one. Ngikhona baba, ngikhona. Yebo ke. Usemoyeni baba, ngakhuluma nathi. Masizwe ke baba. Ngiyabonga baba. Ngiyabonga. Awuzwe Bomkhwanazi from Richards Bay. There we go. Mohlwathupa. Ndade. Ndade Mohlwathupa. Ke ne ke ipotsa jwale ke re o kae? Ke thabile ha ile hore wena o nkile nako ya hao hore o tle o re leletse ka mona. Ke thabile ho utlwa ho wena. A re utlwe he Swati. Uh-huh. Ke utlwa he. Ke lebohe wena mhlomphehi wa ka. Ke na ka utlwa o bua le Lennox e be kana o feta ke thabile hampe ke re no at least ha ke se moyeng ho na le ba bang ba e leng hore ha ba le moyeng o tla bua le bona. Ke lebohe ntate wa ka. All right, 100%. Just a special message that I want to bring out to all the listeners. The community of Nyanga Township and surrounding areas will have an opportunity to interact with Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Advocate Michael Masuta, during an imbizo that's going to be taking place tomorrow. And the minister will initially reflect on various issues that affect the community, such as child maintenance. He's going to be talking about substance abuse. He's going to be talking also about crime and the outline government interventions. So this imbizo will be attended by approximately 900 community members, as well as representatives from Justice, Crime Prevention and Security, the JCPS clusters, such as Departments of Home Affairs, Social Development, the South African Police Services, as well as the Department of Health as well. Now, during the course of the day, various departments and key role players will provide free government services, such as issuing of identity documents. So if you don't have an ID, this is an opportunity for you to go get one. Birth registrations are going to be given there as well. You can apply for one and get one for yourself there at this imbizo. Legal advice and health screening is going to be taking place. Now, this is going to be taking place, like I say, tomorrow, the 29th of July. It'll kick off at 10:30 in the morning. The venue is going to be at Zolani Community Center, Sithandatu Avenue, Konyanga. That's Zolani Community Center, Sithandatu Avenue, in Nyanga. Now, for media confirmations, if the media wants to be part of this, you're more than welcome to call Solomon Kanyaho. His number is 083 499 8243, or you can email him at skanyaho, spelled Kganyago, skanyaho at justice.gov.za.
I wanted to thank you for that announcement on behalf of the minister. I wanted to just also add, and I think it was Kuli that asked the questions about how are we getting this information to communities.
Which links with this one that Mohlwathupa has just spoken about, the in-school education.
Right, yeah. Right. Well, as I said earlier on, the Department of Basic Education has this policy where the issue of cyberbullying has been addressed, and also the issue of abuse. And what we've done is, in terms of cyberbullying, all our regional offices, and there are 9 different regional offices, they also run outreaches in regard to cyberbullying, child maintenance, and all of those issues. So I think what's important is that the communities in the regions need to know where their regional offices are, and to communicate with them where there's a need in regard to the kind of information that's required in communities around cyberbullying and sexting. And so we've made it possible not just to sit at a national office level, but that all the regions can actually also provide that information.
All right, I've got a couple of listeners now holding on onto the line, and I see time is almost gonna run out soon. Let me take these, and then we'll go back to the questions very quickly. Let's take Ikram, if I'm not mistaken. I beg your pardon if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Ikram from Cape Town. Good evening to you. Ikram. Ikram from Cape Town. All right, we're moving on. We're going to Mukopane. Mukopane all the way out in Limpopo. And Hussein is on the line. Hussein, how are you doing, sir? Now, you're cool. Wow, I'm cool as well. Let me have somebody who feels cool this evening. Thank you so much, Hussein. What is your question? All right, Hussein, I tell you what, two things are going to happen. All right, we'll give you just just a response now on this platform, but you guys are our partners, Komkopadi, ne? So what we will do, there's a colleague of ours that's working with you guys, Musoto Stone. We'll make him aware of this problem that you guys are having, and we will deal with it internally as well and see how, to the best of our ability, can we assist you. Because if it's going to affect the way you work, if it's going to affect our work, because it definitely does. If they're doing that and we on air like we are now, and that hinders with your listenership, we're going to have to jump in one way or the other. We might not give the exact solution, but we can definitely point you out to the right direction. So we'll do that. You want to respond to that?
Yes, I think this seems to be definitely one a type of bullying, you want to call it that, but it's more business, and it sounds as though there's some reputational damage that's been done
something
here.
Sinister
And I think what you have just suggested is probably one of the right ways to go, but also to see whether, in terms of tackling this issue, that reputational damage has amount to defamation, and so on a production sort of basis, what this damage amounts to. Okay. So there are a multitude of issues that would need to be addressed, but I think you are better placed in regard to that. It doesn't appear to be a personal issue.
All right.
So yeah.
Okay, so we'll deal with it, Hussein. What I can, if you're listening right now, I see you've been taken off the line. That's okay. But if you can send Musoto Stone an email, that explains exactly what the problem is. He can then maybe see to contact the relevant people internally that can take this up and see how, to the best of their ability, they can help you. Thank you so much for calling in. Let's take a caller from Ezakeni. Zandile. Zandile Ezakeni? Okay, Uzi Ageko. Let's go to Soweto. Noktula. How are you, Sesam? Thank you so much for calling in. What is your question? I can tell you one thing. I'm not a specialist in that, and I will give it to Pratima, who can deal with it. But there's one thing that I'm definitely sure of. If somebody does something to you and you don't like it, that's a starting point to say somebody's not doing you correctly, and you need to get up and seek some help. So that's as far as I can maybe just throw in my 2 little cents in it.
No, I think you're right. That should be the starting point.
Starting point is if you're not comfortable with anything that somebody does to
Yeah.
you, then you need to address that.
Yeah, I think the other effects that one, as a concerned person, would notice is, for instance, if the person that you're talking about was somebody who was, able to concentrate, that they're suddenly not able to concentrate. If it's a school learner, that they drop out of school, that they fail exams, that they experience depression, or they begin to doubt their place in the world, or whether they're worthy, they experience low self-esteem. And also, some of the more serious ones is when, for instance, they withdraw and they start self-harming. So they may start pinching themselves until they bleed, or cutting themselves. Then that's a very serious, it's already reached a very serious point. Often people who are bullied and don't get assistance and don't talk out become extremely depressed. The end result of all of this, if people do not get the assistance they require, is that sometimes they commit suicide.
Yeah.
And that we don't want to be happening. So I think it's very, very good to know that there are people who are wanting to know how other people look and feel, and what are the things that one could watch out for. I think the other thing is, in terms of grown-ups, you'll suddenly find that they are constantly having to look at their phone, and they're constantly wanting to cry all the time. Those are also signs that there's a problem. And I think one shouldn't just walk away from those problems, but rather inquire. And if that person's not reacting to you, rather to get somebody as a third person, independent, who can speak to them. And so it's a mental thing, and it's so harmful that I think we need to care a little bit more. So if it's somebody in your household, ask them how they're feeling, what is it that's concerning, and say to them, I'm here if you need to speak, but get some professional help, or help from social workers as well. Yeah.
All right, we've got 3 minutes to go, and let me see if I can make this very, very quick. Let's not take callers anymore, guys. We definitely running out of time. Let's take Zakes from Lepalale FM. He's going to be our last caller. Is it Ikram? Okay, Ikram. Let's very quickly, Ikram. Thank you so much for calling in. What is your question? Yeah, that's my colleague right there. Thank you so much, Ikram. Wake up pretty early and plan the breakfast show. That's the advice I always get given. Thank you so much, my brother. All right, let's go to Zakes Lepalale FM. Last caller. Mzeze. Yeah, right. Thank you so much for your input. In fact, you've just answered one of our listeners via Facebook who's sent a message or a question really that says, if I'm a parent and I'm a bit worried about what my child is sending via Facebook, will it be a good thing to take away the phone? Well, there you have a response from one parent.
Yeah, it's not a good idea to take away the phone.
Is it not?
It's not a good idea, because then they'll find other measures that they will utilize. I think the thing to do is to sit them down with this, and sit with a social worker and say, let's inquire about this. I think we mustn't try and remove the facility. The facility is sometimes useful when you need it, But when there has been a transgression, then that child needs to be taken to task. So if it's a sexually explicit matter, for instance,
Right.
you need to report it to the police. You need to be able to say, deal with this. The other issue I just want to very quickly address is the issue of taking weapons where somebody has been abused.
Yeah.
It's not on. You can't do that. You cannot, just because you've been abused, take a weapon and want to hurt somebody else.
Je mag dit nie doen nie.
Jy mag dit nie doen nie. Wat jy kan doen is you need to speak to your officials, speak to the social workers, speak to the teachers, speak to the principals. But the taking of weapons into schools is basically not on yet.
Okay, last question from Facebook, and this is Pinky Motswani. She says, what do you do if your manager at work sends you a nude pic and threatens to fire you if you leak that pic?
Report them.
Report them is one thing, and I agree with you, but the part about leaking it as well could be a problem. Like you said in your previous explanation,
Yes.
you leaking that type of thing is also...
It can be a problem, but I suggest, for instance, where first of all, there's a sexual harassment policy, I'm sure, within that company.
Yeah.
She needs to take that immediately to the HR department, and then she needs to report it to the police.
There we go. Sweet and short. 5:05, and that's how we come to the end. Let me say thank you so much to Miss Pratima Osman. She did promise she's going to come back, and she did. Can you believe it? How many months later now?
It's about 5 months later.
That's good. At least it's not a year.
No, we'll
It's not
do
a
this
year.
again.
You'll come back again?
Yes, I will.
Looking forward to that. Ms. Pratima Osman, Senior Legal Administration Officer at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All the radio stations that have taken part this evening, I believe it's about 65 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you to each and every, tongue-tied there because of flu. But thank you so much to each and every single one of you. There we go, for taking part and taking this broadcast and making sure that government's message is reaching to your listeners. We'd really like to thank you for that. All the people who've called in this evening, Boku, Liwo, George, Whatsepo, Lima, Tulani, Mufratupa, Ikram, Hussein, Zandile, Noktula, Mazakes as well, Zegazeg called in there as well, Unoni called in as well. Let me thank you. And my apologies to all the listeners that could not go in. There was quite an influx of callers coming in, so we'd like to apologize if you have not made it. And thank you to you as well for watching this on YouTube. I really, really appreciate it. Technical, let me say thank you so much to Reginald Sanyani. He is the master sound engineer this evening. He does not play games. He puts those levels correctly where they need to be. Finish and klar, no compromise. That's how he rolls. And we've got Usisnon here as well. Usisnon has got a lot of work. She's got 7-8 scripts that she needs to produce, but she still made time to come and produce this show. And thank you so much for that, Nons. I really appreciate it. And of course, we've got our lady Simona on social media. Let me thank you so much for that as well. And then Raromo favorite chiefs. I'm not even going to mention his name. I can mention about Taba favorite club 6 what's going on with him. Raromo the fella. That's fine. Let him sit there. And we've got my wife and daughter as well who decided to come in this evening to come and check us out. Thank you so much for your support as well. From myself, Karabalans, Stroll Runner, Saba Pedil Matebele. Let's meet again next week, Thursday. Same place, same time. Ciao for now.